this meeting order, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We are also going to read our school mission statement. In partnership with communities, the mission of the Dover Public School District is to educate individuals in an environment of trust and respect so they become self-directed, responsible, lifelong learners. All right, roll call. All board members are present. All administration is present. We also have our incoming superintendent, Shannon Hunstead, joining us tonight, so welcome, Shannon. We need to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion? So moved. Motion by Nicole. Is there a second? Second. Second by Laura. First, I should have asked, was there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay, so we got a motion, we got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comments. We have no one here joining us tonight. There was nothing, right? No one else, so. Okay, rebel recognition. Amy had a list when I picked her up, so I'm going to let her talk. Our kids have been doing a lot of fun stuff, so go ahead.
Yeah, we have a lot to celebrate. We had the other night, last week, I can't remember the date exactly, Owen Leach scored 1,000 points in basketball as a sophomore. DGF basketball team also won in double overtime against Perm, and that was their first win against them in 5 years. Is that correct?
Right, yeah.
The Rebel dance team took 6th at state and jazz and 10th for high kick, so they did a phenomenal job. Proud of them. Recognizing Brian, I should have done this last time, but he was recognized by his peers, and he was awarded the Administrator of Excellence by his peers. So that was awesome to see. Congratulations. And then we have our kids that unfortunately they made it to super sectionals in wrestling. However, on Saturday, they did not get to participate because of a COVID exposure, but I would like to recognize these kids. I got to look at the list here. TJ Fuller is the 7th grader at middle school. Jordan Summers, the 10th graders. And then we have Xander Jensen, Preston Johnson, Hunter Fisher, and Blake Cota, who were all seniors. So feel really bad for you guys. I apologize. That's just awful, but you did well, so.
All right. Any other ones? We have speech. Speech has been busy.
Speeches, they've been having some great success. Several people that are subsections are this weekend.
Okay.
So.
Well, hopefully they can do that since it's virtual.
Yeah.
I hope so. Anybody else?
March is Social Work Month, so just recognizing our awesome school social workers. We have one each in the elementary, Carrie and Mary. So just thanks for all they do, social work, counseling work, all of it. So thank you.
All right, awesome. Okay, Joe, you're up. 6.1 Activity Director's Report. Amy didn't steal all your thunder. You can talk about it all.
Done, so.
Just say it again.
All right, dance at sections took second and second. So if you look at what dance has done in the last 10 years since I've been here, it's an amazing transformation. Those girls are the ticket right now. They're consistently performing at the top, and you've seen the progress throughout. So taking second in jazz, second in kick, and then ending up with 6 and 10 in the kind of limited space and the situations that we've had to do. So dance wasn't able to have competitions all together. They had to do it in tiers to make it work, which, they didn't have the opportunity to look at the other schools very often, and they were still able to outperform us. So they did a nice job. We're still waiting for, I know we're get up with their medals and things from the section, and that's all coming from the high school league, but there's a bottle next summer, but they'll be here and we'll get those awards out to them. So girls basketball, that was a rebuilding year. All right, boys basketball. No, that's girls basketball did good. They don't have a lot of upperclassmen this year. We really didn't, and so we relied on maybe some of the younger girls came in and they played hard. We ended up getting the 5 seed in the North They have it the north and south. There's 9 teams in each section. And we ended up traveling up to Roseland and we ended up getting defeated in that game. So that ended their season. Lost a couple games to COVID from other schools this year, so they didn't get to play a full schedule, which was set at 18 this year. But they did a nice job. They picked up, I think they were 3 wins, but you could see that the younger girls coming up and things like that. So hopefully we give them another year or so and they'll be back where DGF basketball usually is at. Boys basketball, congrats to Owen Did, picked up his 1,000th point. We had a big win with Perham. We ended up with the number 1 seed in the north, and Roseville had to come to us on Thursday, and we were able to beat them, and then we lost to the number 4 team in the south, which is Barnesville. So the only teams that we're used to seeing regular are us and Holly. We're actually both in the north, which is a little bit weird, and then your Brecks and Barnesvilles and Perham, Pelican, Crazy, they're all in the south. The south was, it's our Heart of Lakes conference, which was so competitive this year. So even though the Holly and DGF were in the north and we get a 1 seed, that wasn't really indicative if they would have actually seeded at 1 through 18 or 1 through 16 once we had the pigtail games. We wouldn't have been a 1 seed. We would have maybe been a 4 or 5 seed in all reality. So don't think a 1 we lost to a 4. That's skewed as far as kind of where we're at. But good game, didn't go the way we wanted. And lastly was wrestling. And like Amy had said, we did have 6 kids that qualified. They had it set up a little bit different where, we kind of team up with the section next to us. So 7 and 8 were together, 5 and 6, 3, 4, 1, 2. And we competed there. We had 6 that could have went on, but due to an exposure, they were unable to wrestle. So. And then speech, it sounds like we've got a couple national qualifiers. Is that on the debate side? I'm trying to try to keep it straight, but yeah, and then we've got the section coming up this weekend.
Do we have any play this spring, or are we foregoing that, or don't we typically do a play in the spring?
Yeah, we're looking at middle school doing a 1 act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ours will be the weekend or so. Not this week.
Okay. All right, well, that'll be exciting for the kids. Any questions for Joe? All right. Oh, I was just gonna say publicly, Joe has done the head coach reviews this fall, so we're gonna get those. Those are all short up, so we'll be bringing those forward pretty soon to do, and then he'll do the winter ones. So just so we publicly recognize, he did go through all with the football, volleyball, cross country, and he'll do the same thing for winter sports coaches. And so we should get those out pretty soon, so they can get planned for summer activities and stuff like that. So, all right, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, 6.2, community ed report. Tracy, you're up. And Tracy had sent us all an email to view what she was going to talk about tonight.
Does everybody have a copy of the need one?
I don't know if it's in here or just probably my email.
I didn't bring it with.
I'll just get it to you. Pass them around. Overall, a couple things we wanted to touch on was, one of the things was the district communication. Part of my job in working with our admin cabinet and Brian is just making sure that the messages and the communication that we get out goes out timely and it meets the needs of the staff and community stakeholders. When we do have a district message, obviously we send it out to the staff, try to get to them first, then we put it through the school messenger, social media platforms of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also, if you go to the DGF webpage, on the top, there's a link called COVID updates. On there is every message that we've sent out throughout the year. We also include, as we started the year, Heidi and Wayne would send out weekly emails to their parents. We also add those there as well. When it comes to programming, one of the things we really have to look at from a community ed standpoint, obviously, is the COVID requirements and what we need to follow. I did share this in the link. One of the things that we've established is when we look at a program, what do we have to have in place to offer that program? I have attached kind of the sample template in the email, of what we do. We try to really, have participants come in one entrance, go out another. We have a sanitizer, we go in pods. Truly try to follow those things to a T and making sure we know at all times who is there and so forth. An example is we do have open gym on Sundays at both sites. We do attendance, we have them all sign up, and then I make sure I get the list to both of the supervisors, and then at the end, they make sure they get it back to me so that we can track who's there. Driver's ed this year, we're fortunate enough to do that, take the on-site class and build it to an online program, so we were able to meet all the needs of the students that wanted to attend. 3rd through 6th grade, we usually have the big league in the fall that goes from October all the way through February. Due to COVID, we had to kind of be creative, and we created a program that was 3rd through 6th grade, and we were still able to offer a program that was more in our backyard, and we had more of our local schools participate with us. We also have the K-6 wrestling program. That'll be wrapping up next week. With the distance learning process, we'll see where we are and if we need to extend it a little bit further. We also have rolled out K2 volleyball, and we're partnering with Sanford Power Basketball to do a K2 girls and boys basketball program coming up here in the next month. We have 3rd through 4th grade volleyball and the normal JO volleyball that we tried to start last year, and COVID kind of shut us down. We got it going this year, going great. We'll adapt and move as we need to extend that if we have to. Open gym is going well, a lot of participants there. Daddy-daughter ball, that's huge for us. That we have about 180 couples in December that come. Couldn't have it this year, so we decided to offer a spring ball this year. So we just put that out on Friday or Saturday, and if we have to move it, we'll move it. One thing we did build in though, that we will have like our normal Grand March. We'll probably do 3-year-olds through kindergarten at one time for Grand March, and 1st through 5th at another time, just so that we meet occupancy guidelines. We'll do work with Partnership for Health on our Bike to School Day. We're working with Jeff Lee, SRO, and Nicole to offer our class. When I'm in charge, it's kind of a safe on your own class. As students go into summer, they know how to prepare to be alone and so forth. We're working hard on our summer rec. We have a league meeting with all of the neighboring communities coming up on April 6th to kind of figure out who's going to participate, what grade levels, and so forth. And then I'm going to be meeting with our advisory council as well. Our goal is to get the brochure online by April 12th. We'll schedule the games a little bit later in May. Concessions is kind of not been as busy this year, but we've been, put in those safety parameters to keep it open. So kind of nice that I think we were probably the only school that had it open. Post-prom, May 1st and 2nd for us. The rules will be coming to the school board at your April meeting, and then we will be meeting with our junior post-prom parents probably in the next 2 weeks. Any questions for us?
No, but I just want to thank you for the concessions. I know you and your family put a lot of hours in having that available for the spectators and the kids, and no other school did it, Tracy. So testament to you and your family, the hours you guys put in here, and you're much appreciated, and the Belkas for filling in too. So thank you for doing that.
It works.
For the kids. Well, everybody's like, it's like a normal game, we can have popcorn, so. So that was good, and I feel like, the spectators were respectful, wearing their masks and doing what they were supposed to. They'd have their snack and put it back on, so.
Yeah.
So thank you. That was very nice of you to do that, so.
Thank you.
Okay, board committee reports. Who has a board committee report?
We had operations, last week? It was the week before. And we discussed the cleaning schedule and the custodial staff.
And we have agreed that Tracy Tolson is going to be kind of the go-to person for custodial staff. She's got like a schedule lined up, not only training new staff expectations, but also a schedule for how the school is going to be cleaned, deep cleaned, etc. So Tammy will report to Tracy, and Tracy will hopefully get us organized and cleaner.
The other thing I have to add to that is Tracy has a background in that, so we felt that that was a pretty good connection, and we think it'll go really well.
Did you do any discussion on outside contracting or anything?
We want to give this an opportunity to work
See it
first.
work.
We're going to give Tracy an opportunity to shape and shift it up, and we should be good. So if we have to revisit, we will, but of course, we want to give this an opportunity to develop our inside staff.
Sounds good. David, you wanna,
Sure.
I can't remember what the F and P.
So we
I have
had
too many things
We
in
had
my
two of them,
mind.
didn't
we
we?
had two.
Yeah, we had two, so you two can do the talking today.
I don't remember.
Okay, well, that's one way to do it.
Well, one was a personnel issue that we
Yes.
really can't talk about
Yeah,
too much.
so, yeah, we had personnel issue, some potential retirement issues, and one of which is actually on the agenda. We'll talk about that, we'll let Brian talk about that when that comes up. Then the last meeting was about preliminary budget, or not preliminary budget, the budget as we come toward the end of the year and where we're at with that. And I don't know, Brian, are you planning to do an update on that?
Yep.
Talk about that? So
I figured we'd do it in
it's
the-
probably best coming from Brian than having me mangle numbers, so, but the bottom line is that the bottom line's not bad, so.
Looked better than we thought.
Better than we
Yeah.
thought.
Well, we should just say that there was an overestimation of, pupil units, which, a lot of factors with COVID this year played into that. And luckily, after much combing and fine combing, this is why Brian doesn't have any hair anymore, but he combs the budget.
Right.
It's all good, but he'll talk about that when he gets to the budget portion. But I think that's all we talked about.
Yeah.
Personnel issue, retirements, and then,
In the budget.
budget revision. So, yeah, and two of those things are on the agenda this evening, so. Anybody else have any reports? No, everybody's shaking their head. All right, Brian, 6.4, your report.
So it just really comes down to there's a ton of things that we've got planned for the work session. Some of them, again, there's probably I think 7 or 8 topics on there, but we've only got 2 hours tonight, and part of it, some of these topics will just maybe be a broad stroke as far as here's the next steps. Some of these pieces, whether it be the mascot issue and such. So we want to make sure we get that into the work session, so at least we can have some brainstorming discussion. So otherwise, besides that, like has already been said, the question I have for you is, do you want me to walk through a couple of these action item things in report, or wait until we get to the actual action item?
Why don't we wait till we get to the action items on the budget and the retirement? So I just think right now, probably for the public, just to kind of talk about what transpired today and just give the board a report on that.
So basically over the last 24 hours, for me, it probably started at 8:45, I suppose. I think Heidi had a conversation with Kayla. We got knowledge that we had some, one family in particular that we were going to have more positives starting. By the time we got to so that was about 8:45 last night. We talked about that a little bit last night, just between Kayla and I, because of knowing that this wasn't going to be like from one event. This has got multiple grade levels, multiple buildings, elementary, middle school, and high school. And by the time that, so we left it last night, that Kayla called MDH, explain what we've got going on. Let's see if we can get a meeting set up with MDH and all of our admin cabinet. So we were able to get that for 10 o'clock. And that's what we proceeded to do. We basically brought in our health department, so we had both of our RNs are county licensed registered nurses, and also Beth is our LPN, so we brought them all in, admin cabinet in, and then had a rep from MDH. By that time at 10 o'clock, I think when we were looking at just even the student numbers as far as quarantines. And it's, it's definitely worth talking about what spurs a quarantine, okay? As far as the tracing and what else not. I can tell you this, that we've gone into this from the very beginning, and a lot of, I would say, far and away from staff standpoint, in the discussions last spring and over the summer, people wanted to know that this wasn't going to be done by administration. They wanted somebody that was objectively going to make those decisions, that this wouldn't be done by the offices themselves. And that's what we've done. We've expected the training to come from MDH to all of our people that are making those decisions objectively. What is the tracing, the contact tracing that has to be done? And so by 10 o'clock, our student numbers, when we just look at that spreadsheet, that we've tracked everything, we went from line 1180 to 1266 at that point. In other words, and we already had 86 students that were being tracked.
And it's at 1336 now.
And 1338.
Yeah.
So we're, there's a lot. What's the positive amount up to now? It was at, I believe, 10.
I think it's at 10.
Still, so it's at 10. So over the course of the weekend, now we have 10. When you look at the past month, we've had maybe 1 across the district, and now over the weekend we picked up 10 positive cases. So, what's that?
That's all.
Yeah, on the students. It's interesting that it's all students. Where in the past, in the fall, it was across the board, adults, students, everything. No big cluster event. When we started the school year, we had a cluster event that we knew took place with some of the seniors and people out and about. But this is a little bit different because we got a lot of different things that have been going on. Whether it happened to be through community ed exposure with the different sports and everything else going on. I mean, let's face it, that you got North Dakota, the state B, whether you got some relatives going to things and what else not. But bottom line is we talked at 10 o'clock that we needed to, if we're truly going to, the discussion administratively and with that whole group was, is it going to be helpful to go to hybrid, to go into a hybrid model, or is that going to help at all? And with the fact that knowing the amount of kids and that it's spread across all the sites, the hybrid wasn't going to make sense because you don't even know which kids you're supposed to be keeping together because it's all encompassing as far as we looked at the spread. So then it came down to, let's make preliminary plans, revisit it at 2 o'clock as far as what are we seeing by 2 o'clock. And of course, by that point, we're having the discussion again. A lot of kids being sent home because they're physically sick, going to get testing done during the week. And again, from an administrative standpoint, we don't do the contact tracing decisions. That is all done by our health department on purpose to keep that separation. So, we could have discussions about the quarantining process. But in general, we don't make those calls. So it became, we know we've got 100 and some students that are going to be quarantined. And knowing that for this type of event, if we're trying to keep it from becoming a super spreading event, we've already got 100 and some. So we know that we're somewhere between, at 100, right there, we're at 6%. So now we're up to what, 150? So we're somewhere between 5 to 10% that are quarantined. We're not at a 5%. It's not like the flu bug where you wait for 5% to be positive cases. Because the problem is, unlike, I've had conversations with one of our neighbors, as far as why don't we just let it run its course? Well, part of the problem with that is, unlike the flu, we've got to have them there, they're out for 10 days. So it's how many of the kids are you going to have out for 10 days? We know we've got next week, we're coming into the holiday weekend. So does that, if we're able to contain it, you've got that possibility that you can have the kids all coming back into direct after the Easter break. Now, we all know it can happen. You got another holiday weekend. Is that going to be another super spreading type of event? Who knows? But that was the process that we went through. I wanted to hear from everybody. Does anybody have any strong feelings either way? Staying direct, going into distance. And it was pretty much unanimous. I think I saw pretty much all thumbs up that we need to go into distance models. So that's what we did. They had done all as Shannon saw, I mean, the whole team really went into task mode from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. I mean, they had the communication ready. They had what are the action items that we've got to do before we put out communication to families? What are the things that we have to be looking at doing before tomorrow as we start transition planning? So they spent we got 2 days I know that the elementary principals, they met with their site leadership because the middle school and high school, it's a little bit easier going into the distance. They've been doing so much of that in hybrid model anyway. But the elementaries haven't. So that's where the recommendation for 2 days of transition. Is it going to be 1? Is it going to be 2? And the recommendation coming from the elementary staff was, okay, if we're going to do this through next week, we need 2 days of getting all the materials together for the kids, the packets. It'll give more time to work with Chelsea and make sure that we've got everything lined up for the meals and all that other preparation plan.
So for the public, this 2 days, is this still under that executive order?
Correct. So when we're in distance model, so we do exactly what we were doing before distance model. Transition day on Wednesday is a regular transition. So they count those as full, we get full credit on the days. They're non-instructional, but they're transition.
So we won't be short.
We won't be short. We won't lose
instructional days.
anything during this time whatsoever. And then when we get into the following Wednesday, because we'll be in that distance model, then of course Wednesday is that shortened day next week with your instruction, middle school, high school, and all that. So they'll have that afternoon, full afternoon for some of their staff work and such. I'm assuming that's what you guys are planning all out. So again, Wednesday this week has to be transition day. So that'll be regular day for the staff as far as they're all going to be on site, correct? And doing the planning. And ask the principals questions if you got it. As far as, I know there's strong feelings out there as far as this whole quarantining piece. I think we've all had plenty of those discussions. I brought it up at both the 10 o'clock and the 2 o'clock meeting. There are going to be people out there that will honestly, and we've got to talk about it legitimately as far as let it run its course. The adults have gotten their vaccinations if they want their vaccinations. The kids typically are not seeing severe drawbacks. So, I mean, you can have those discussions about, is it worth just saying, let's just keep them all in, knowing you're going to have more kids that are going to get testing positive. But knowing that there were so many different, we can't, unlike most times when you've got your super spreading events, there isn't any one occasion that we can say this is where it came from and what started this. Because it's all across the board with so many different possibilities.
I do have a question about that. Was there any discussion on if there was like a class, like a kindergarten class or whatever class that was not exposed, had no quarantines, had no connection to that, keeping those kids in and kind of dividing the school? I mean, because I would assume at 158, there's got to be quite a few classrooms that aren't affected. So I know that's going to be.
You guys want to talk about that from the elementary
Can I
standpoint?
add on to that, because it's probably gonna be in the answer. My question would be, seeing as there's 10 positives, what would be, why couldn't we, K through 8, quarantine a cohort instead of just going all distance? So like say, one class has a positive kid, you quarantine instead of shutting down the whole school.
Or even if one quarantine kid in that classroom, so we just exposed that classroom today, for instance, take that whole classroom out. Like 3 of my kids said, yep, somebody came in and they took a kid out, and so, I mean, obviously that would be a high risk for them to be spreading, but one of the other ones didn't have that happen. So was there any discussion there, I guess?
So do you guys want to talk about at the grade levels or elementary in comparison to?
We can definitely speak that, towards the elementary. This event, okay, so first of all, the quarantine, it hasn't changed what we have for quarantines, the days have. But now that we're in 5 days a week, we don't have 6 feet. So we are ending up quarantining more children because lunch and breakfast, they don't wear their masks. So that's part of this. So we end up having to quarantine, people across the table, right next to you, around you. So that's part of it. We did talk about a little bit about how we can modify the schedules in the classes and have one third grade teacher do this and one third grade teacher do that. But we have so many different people, so many different connections through all sorts of different groups. We don't know right now who it has affected. And speaking, from the Linden Felton school, I mean, we sent probably, besides the one that were quarantined, like legitimately sick kids with symptoms, I would say at least 10 home with symptoms today from all sorts of different classes. So we're not seeing a huge pattern like kindergarten and Linden, or we're not seeing, we do see, some of those patterns, but it's all over the board. So it's really hard to call that. And that was part of our discussion this morning. Do anything else?
In the time when we had to make the decision too, numbers were still, the numbers changed from 10 till 2, and they just kept increasing, and there wasn't, if it was something that we could pattern, I think it's a different discussion. And when it's something that, typically it's, all right, our basketball team, our football team that was quarantined, that's an easy 50 kids, all right, you're out, we're good. It was sporadic, and it was continuous as we went through the day, and it was just, they kept on, they couldn't call them fast enough. And I think if we had the end, if it was noon, and all right, we're done making our calls, I think we could have looked at it and said, all right, what do we see here? Do we have a handle on it? And it would have been business as usual. But I think with there's still a lot of question marks attached to it.
And there's a lot of frustration too with not being able, and we're not going to disclose the COVID person of positive cases. And I think there's frustration with the community when we say you're in close contact. Well, who was the close contact? We've got so many rules at MGH. our nurses are rocked it today, that we have to follow with this quarantine. And if they're in this many feet for this much time, they have to be quarantined. And it's like, do we want to just nip it right now and hopefully get our kiddos back April 6th? I mean, that was a huge deal too. And I know I had lots of questions saying, who's positive? Who's positive? I want to know, and I'm not going to, I can't disclose that. And I think if we were to disclose that, it'd make more sense to a lot of people, but we're not going to do that, and we can't do that, if that makes sense.
And I would say too, probably just because I share space with her, I know that, if we have an identified positive case, Eileen truly will pull the bus tape and literally say, I need to take 2 seats in front of the student, 1 across, and 2 behind. So it was like pulling tape after tape, and okay, who's this kid, who's that kid, and so there was a lot, and she's not done. So just that process, just so that you know what that process entails, Once she knows, then she starts doing the transportation piece after the principals have kind of done their piece.
And for us, with the cohorts, I think you brought up the cohorts, or you did, so we have the cohorts and we have, seating charts where the kids are sitting by similar people all day long. Not every classroom has the exact same furniture or the exact same setup, so it's roughly the same kids. But when you go from in-person where you're 3 feet to the 6 feet, you have a larger number. So like if we would have been a hybrid, we probably would have had as many kids that were considered, close contact. So when I get a name, first of all, I look on the seating charts and I say, okay, these are the kids, this is kind of and I send it out to my 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade teachers, and I say to them, this 6 feet, more than 15 minutes, and the different guidelines that we have. And I send that to them, I say, are these the kids that you would agree? And someone will say, well, I'm not sure, I don't think that one, but yes, this one, because they are the ones that have them in the classroom. Take that list, or the students, and like today, it's so crazy, we were busy all day, bring the students to Kayla and Katie, they go through and they ask the questions of the kids. They go so much to say, they take the bus, they say, show me where you're sitting on the bus. Okay, I'm sitting here. Which days are we sitting? Okay, which route? And then they go back and they calculate how many minutes. It takes them hours and hours and hours, and they work their tails off from this. And I feel like they ask questions to the kids. I know, for example, Kayla was calling home to ask one of the girls some questions, some additional questions, because she wants to make sure that she's getting that information. And I think the difference for me is with the in-person, it really grew double because of the fact that we don't have the 6 feet. So I see your question, and I wish it was like that, but what happens is then you have some connections through the volleyball, or you have some connections through they're sending a family member home because of COVID, well, then I have to send home a brother or sister. And so it just ripples, and because of our smaller community, boy, those connections are just there that you wouldn't believe. And I know high school hasn't even got through all theirs yet, and literally as we're sitting here, I'm watching the numbers grow. And so I think it would be wonderful if we could do that, because like if I would have started off just this morning with my one little cohort, but boy, it just kept growing, and I even ran to get some lunch, and I'm on my lunch, Kayla called me and said, hey, I need you to do another one. Got back at 1 o'clock, I was doing another one, since we do in my office. And we just kept doing it and doing it, and it just kept growing. And so I think like the contact tracing is a multiple of professionals that have the physical basis, physical time around them, but then we bring them to Kayla. I do anyways, and then Jill does it over and over, that's over Linda, and they kind of ask the questions and do determination. So I think what happens so the kids may see that there's a certain group of cohort, but then there's those connections from the other side, from the other activities. They're really positive growth. So that's kind of our process. I don't know if that explains it.
So essentially, if you would have just taken the cohort out, like say all of us had a cohort,
Yeah.
and you all 3 had positive kids, we would send your classes home. There'd be more classes sent home than there'd be kids in school, classes in school.
Sorry, say that again. This morning, the one cohort that I sent home, there was more kids at home than there was in school today.
No, I'm like next scale version of that,
Oh,
like
yeah.
Entire cohort. So
Yeah.
like, let's say Amy's class had a positive,
Yeah.
David's didn't, Laura's did. I would send the positive cohort, the entire class home. So my question would be, would we have more kids at home or more kids at school?
Yeah, so for that, we would have sent an entire cohort, we haven't done that yet anyways, unless there was, happened to be unlucky and had somebody in this corner, it was enough of the kids, we're only sending the ones that are in close contact.
Okay, I understand. I think my perspective is it's easier to send a cohort home and of a positive student, so we're not, it's easier for the teachers too to teach all online
Yeah.
or have them all in person, but then you're not having to do the contact tracing because you just sent the class home and know they'll be back in whatever days.
Right, and in that case, we would have done that today, just off it would have been, there would have been a lot.
More cohort.
Probably even at 70 to 80% of cohorts, because the problem is it's not like, normally when you got an event, you can trace it to one classroom. okay? You isolate that classroom, you send them home, all of that. But because we've got them through so many different means of contacting with each other,
Right.
you can't identify particular cohorts that are a problem. So if let's say we had school tomorrow, and this is part of, of what we're having to walk through today. Let's say that we said, we're gonna delay this for a day and we know that overnight it's just gonna get to be more kids. And we're gonna have those questions from families also on, why did you bring my kid back to school when you hadn't finished checking to see who else may be that may need to be quarantined? And you now just exposed my child to another day when they could have been at home while you're continuing to figure this out, because they're not done with all the checking. And now knowing that more kids went home sick, that are probably going to be positive, is going to open the door to that many more groups through social, through the contact tracing that are going to end up being in quarantine. So I think that was the dilemma. If you know that you already went from 0 to 10, from 15 quarantine to 150, 60 in one day, what is day 2 going to bring? Because typically during a week that we see this stuff, it's not a one-day event. It just balloons as we go through the week. And you can just see it when you go back and you look at all of the events. If you go through the spreadsheet and you see that once we get some of this going, it blows up, and by the end of the week, I wouldn't be shocked if we got 500 that either are in quarantine, or we might have 30 or 40 that are actually positive. Could have 50. We don't know yet because they're going in for testing. And some of them are probably going to be just fine, asymptomatic and what else not, but how do you know right now? So we're trying to be, I think, getting as much feedback from everyone, the principals, and as far as what are you seeing, what are you hearing from the health, from Beth, and we gave them all a chance to give us your opinion. Is it worth trying to keep kids in, knowing that you're not sure how many more are going to get exposed as you keep the kids in or not? So
I still, sorry, I'm trying to be a dead horse, I guess, but my perspective is if you do quarantine an entire class, then you're not having that, are we going to expose so-and-so, because that whole class is gone. And I know there's good cross with the sports and the playing and whatever, but I feel like mitigating it by quarantining a class would be a lot easier than trying to just do their, and who else did they touch, because you eat lunch with your class, right?
the problem, Brittany, is there's one. It's not like if you go through from what they're seeing on the numbers and what I was seeing on the numbers by these different grades, it's not like you could just say, following 3 classes look like they got more of them, so we'll quarantine those and leave the other ones alone.
I'm just talking about the positive cases, not like Lindsay's class has 7 kids out, let's quarantine them. Just like her class was a positive case, let's quarantine them.
So you're saying that you would only want to quarantine the people that have positive cases, not the people that would be close contact?
No, quarantine the entire class of the person with a positive case. So if your class had a positive case, the whole class was quarantined, because you can't social distance in full in person, right? We're at 3 feet by recommendation. So by nature, it's kind of all close contact.
And then the teacher would always have to teach online with those students.
Online, yes, she'd have, or he, whoever, they would have the whole class online or their whole class in person, except for, let's say I played a sport, you might have one kid who's a close contact.
Understand what you're saying, but this is when we're talking about the fact that it's not just the classroom of where that kid is that's positive, it's the other kids that kid exposed in all the other classrooms because of the things going on the community ed events and what else not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just looking at the social for the contact tracing in the classroom. All of a sudden, if this was isolated to classrooms, it would be easier. But so much of this stuff is coming about because of things going on outside of school.
So what are we gonna do to mitigate it from after this if we know it's not coming from the classroom?
That's a good question.
That's our whole thing, right? None of this is coming from the classroom. So how do we keep our kids in school?
And that's where you have to make some decisions about whether you back off on all the extracurriculars again.
Parents need to make what the best decision, and keeping the kids in class, in my opinion, is of the utmost importance. And so that means that the kids, pull them from the community basketball and volleyball and all of those sorts of things. Because, yes, I know that that's important, but for all of the work that the admin team does for every single decision, it just, I've said from day one, if the adults would make the best decisions and act like adults, that then we would be able to keep the kids in class. I mean, I miss being social and doing all those sorts of things, but I haven't, because I want to make sure that I do my part to make sure that the kids are in school. So I think
It's a lot of disappointment, especially us that have older children that just got back into school for the first time
Like one
and to see, so I understand the frustration of everybody at this table, everybody in this room that works so hard to get our kids back to school. I understand the parents that are emailing. I've got a few, we've got seniors, they were celebrating homecoming week, so I think we need to, once they get back in the building, continue homecoming week. Yeah, second time, third time's a charm. Okay, third time's a charm. And I just think there just needs to be some reassurances for, like, especially, the principals and the sites just saying, the communication here, this is what we are doing. As far as like Google Meets, I mean, I had a sixth grader that struggled, grades were horrible and I think I got one teacher sent Google Meets. So, I mean, that's what I'm hearing from multiple parents, like, what happened, where are the cracks, how do we know about this? So if we can, communicate with our parents, the middle school and high school about Google Meet times and stuff, and obviously, I mean, our elementary students, this is new for them. It sucks, I don't know what else to say. I'm totally disappointed and
Nora and I would add to,
I'm over it.
from our standpoint, from community ed, I think when you look, for us that look at the list, it's probably bigger than community ed. I think it's just across the whole district. But I think the other piece is to, us sitting around the table can't control behaviors of parents who choose to do travel ball or that are even outside of the district. I'm probably speaking for maybe Joe and I, maybe more from the activities, extracurricular side. I think we try to put in as many safety precautions as we can. But as we would see in games, we'd get fans like this, and you were constantly doing the policing, and Joe was probably the biggest police chief on that. But I think we do the best you can and keep your numbers low and all of that. But I would agree, academics is always priority. I think we say that across the board, but we'll do, what the board would like if it's slowing things down a little bit and having smaller cohorts, whatever it is. We just want them back in the building.
What was the discussion at 2:00 for the starting right after the Easter break? Was there much discussion about delaying it a few days because of families getting together over the holiday?
That's ongoing right now. Right now, we want to put out just that we know we're going to be in distance to that point. And then we've got to evaluate as the numbers come in over the course of this next week, the amount of positives and what else not. Hopefully we don't have to extend it beyond that. Hopefully we can control it with this. But it's definitely been a topic as far as, will this have to be extended? Hopefully not.
In MDE, there's I can't remember if it's the state learning plan, I don't know, I was looking at stuff, I didn't remember it, but one of them talks about, because if you have like that event, like a super spreader, or you have, large community members of students, whatever, being quarantined or positive, that if you're looking to transition to a distance learning, that you should look at a 2-week, time frame rather than going further than that. That's what NDH recommends in NDE, looking at from that standpoint. So that's why that day right after like Monday the 6th, April 6th, instead of like going a whole nother week after Easter. But again, we can relook at it because if the numbers aren't going down or they're creeping up, then that's something where we have to look at, maybe we continue with another week of distance learning to try to get these numbers down, or can we get everybody back in? I mean, our goal is to get everybody back in on the 6th.
I fear that it's gonna be longer. I mean, once the school goes distance, I'm scared it's gonna be hard to get everyone going from distance to full back in person. Like, our little kids have not done this through the worst of the county numbers. I mean, at 4 days a week. I mean, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So I am worried. I hope we can look at it as like big picture and not have to go K-12 all the time.
Yeah, well, and I think we talked about that too today, Brittany, about as a district right now, we felt like the need to go K-12 because it's so across the board. But looking at the numbers in a week or so to see, and if the numbers are better in elementary, can we bring the elementary back again full time? And then, yeah, and then maybe the middle school go hybrid again, or can we bring them back full time, middle school and high school? I think that would be our ultimate goal, is to get everybody in the building. But if we have to look at different levels, we're not going to.
Right, or the transition like we were talking about, yeah. Just because I know, especially we talked about it before, K2 don't have devices.
Yeah.
And, or care, or child care, so I feel for everyone.
Yeah.
But we talk a lot about the big kids, but like the little kids are on their own.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's much harder.
and we're gonna get paper packets sent home, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And that's not always doable, to be honest. Like, the little kids are probably gonna go to daycare, go to grandma's house, or wherever else. When you're at home at 6 o'clock, you're not gonna sit down with a paper packet and do it. But they can't necessarily go on the Google Meet either. There's just no good answer. I'm not trying to blame or anything, but that's why it's just sucks.
Brian, I'm getting a lot of feedback that's not positive on this. You know, people have told me they're thinking about moving their kids to a different district. I know we've heard that before. One of the questions I have is, what's different about DGF? Why, other schools have been able to stay open? Are we doing things differently than other schools? Or we're just unlucky?
We've got a cluster.
More aggressive in contact tracing, or what's going on?
Well, if you're looking for the past month, we haven't had positive cases. We just got hit with an event, some type of event that's taken place over the past weekend. We've got 10 positive cases out of the blue. We've got a month with only having 1 positive case. So, unlucky? I don't know.
That's what people are asking.
So what
People know.
Like, we do know it's an event, like, whatever we talk about.
We're trying to keep it from becoming, from a cluster to a super spread. If we maintain being open, and right now we don't have a real good handle on how many kids are actually positive. It's the difference between having a cluster and creating something much larger. So how long has it been since we've had 10 positive students? I mean, when you look at all of those weekly deals, we haven't had this for a while. So I don't think it's that, DGF has been unlucky. We've been maintaining very well, but all of a sudden now we just happen to get hit with something.
My concern is just for the kids' mental health and some of the safety measures that aren't at home, and kids that may be left at home that shouldn't be left at home or are unattended, or God forbid something tragic happens, because that's what I see on my other side. And I have some real concerns about our high-risk kids, our kids that have been dealing with domestics and other things at home, mental health, suicidality, all of those other pieces. And I know that you guys all think that too.
Yep.
And we've all had those conversations, but I just want that put out, that I think is a huge major concern. And that's where I'm struggling right now, is that my kids are gonna be fine. Like, I don't like it, they don't like it, we aren't gonna like it. I mean, I'm gonna be angry, I'm gonna move on. But my concern is for the kids that don't have the support at home, and that this is gonna be a detrimental thing for them. I know none of us in this room can fix that, but.
Statewide, Carter County, over a couple of weeks ago, had one of these big events, happen, where it just have to get carved out. And don't know why, don't know how. We know there was a lot of traveling sports and what else not. And all of a sudden, they had a couple of schools that had to shut down, going the distance to try to stop it from continuing. They were worried about it being the rest of the spring. That if we try to keep this open, we're gonna continue to have more positives. And so, and that's one of the reasons, it's like, can we contain it, put it into a small period of time? That's what we're trying to do before it hits and gets worse. If we look at any of the events we've had, they typically are not 1 or 2 day events. You get some kids sick, they go see other kids, 2, 3, 4 days later, then all of a sudden they're sick, and this thing just continues. And we either play it out for the 6 weeks that it usually takes to get through that. Think about at Thanksgiving break, and that basically we went October into November. It took 4 or 5 weeks it took before it got down. You know, you go from having these events, and then it's going to stay that way for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then you get back, and then you keep going back and forth with that. We don't want this to go the rest of the spring. That's why we're trying to contain it and keep it as a cluster event and not super spreading throughout the whole school district.
So what is the status now if we're shutting down so distant as far as all activities? If we're not having school, is there anything going on, or are they all suspended?
So, Joe, do you want to talk about that as far as baseball and some of the things like
Yeah,
school?
so officially they start next Monday, but they have, baseball's got an allowance to do an arm conditioning training, so I talked with the coaches, and that's something that they can do individually. So we suspended that for this week, just to, until we kind of see where the numbers taper off at. If they taper off, they didn't want to have bringing students into a gym when we're sending everyone home. So as of right now, we're kind of, we're pausing this week to kind of see where numbers.
We're in between season, which helps a little.
In community ed, we're pausing all the way till April 6th. We're gonna see, right now, some of ours haven't started yet. So it's really mainly volleyball, is that something we can offer this summer? Absolutely. We can continue to monitor and work as a team and see where we are, but we're following MDH guidelines when we do offer anything anyway, but like I say, we can't control what's going on outside. That's the hardest part.
If you're sick, stay home.
Well, first off, I'll offer you all an apology for firing me because I am, feeling that these kids, they need to have access to their teachers. So my phone has been blowing up today. So yes, I disagree with this entirely. The kids need to be in the building. But with that being said, I'm an essential worker because I'm in healthcare, right? So I had an elementary student that needed to come to daycare, but they're supposed to be on quarantine. Are you telling them who they can't be daycare?
If they're on quarantine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, how many kids, do we have a number yet of people that
These are our survey today.
Yeah, and really, I think the most we had last time was what, 60?
Back in March.
You do say 5-0.
5-0.
5-0.
We haven't really had time to look at that.
I know.
What the responses are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't be in school.
Right, and we got to have that ready for Thursday, as far as the daycare.
I'd like to say a piece about the mental health is, I 100% see that. I'm more worried about that than the academic and the other pieces that are brought up. I agree with you on that. I think one of the things that resonated, and I told Marianne about this today, was when I had to bring the first group down to Kayla today. It felt like a punch in the stomach, because here we were back for a week, and I'm having conversations and saying, you may be close contact, Kayla's gonna talk to you, walk you through this, see where you're at, and it just, one of the things that struck me so much is I was talking to them, I said, I'm sorry guys, I know we just got back, and I was talking to them about it, and they just were so strong and resilient, and I know they probably went home and they weren't that way, but I said to one of the kids, I said, just think about all the technology skills you learned this year, and he goes, well, there is that, and so it is tough, but I'll tell you that
today we dealt with a pretty significant mental health issue at school too. And I worry about that, and our counselors are trying really hard, and I just would encourage anybody that's listening, that if you're feeling that way about your student, to reach out to the counselors at each school or the social workers, because they really, really want to help. So if you're listening and you see and you're worried about that, reach out. If we can't meet the needs, they have resources, there's people that we can connect with you. And I know we've been saying that all year, but I think especially now would be important to reach out. We'll
Maybe you
help.
can include that an email from an officer.
Yeah.
Just to remind, I know that it was on there about the meals, so
I think-
anybody can get meals.
Yeah, there's that piece on there, there is at the very bottom, but I think when we set out our individual ones, we'll generate contact names for each of the counselors and social workers at their sites.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and just, if you know someone that's positive, we all just need to be good neighbors and check on each other, make sure we're all doing okay.
And I would like to clarify that too, this isn't just because of one student, or it's more. And I think that's one thing that really we have to be careful of in the community, is making sure people understand that it isn't just one.
Yeah, it's multiple students, and it's.
And family members that have it, and there's just different things, so.
Yeah,
And Amy, just to respond to your question, there's only 19 with childcare requests right now.
Okay, thank you.
okay, well, let's get moving on here. I'm sure we could talk about this much longer. As always, if there's questions for the public watching, please reach out to your site principal. They'll do their best to answer your questions. So let's move on to 7.1. This is our approval of our regular meeting on March 8th. Do we have a motion? Motion by Amy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by David. Any question or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda, claims and accounts. Laura, what are our bills?
320,074.21 cents.
All right, we also have in your packet the treasurer report, fund total report, Minnesota liquid asset and max account, activities account report. Do you have a motion to approve? Motion by David, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nicole. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, new and unfinished business, 9.1. This is the 2021-22 DGF school calendar. Are you guys going to present on that again, which one we decided to go with, or are we?
The school calendar.
School calendar?
Oh, you want me to talk about it right now?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I was looking at something else.
So, I know we had some communication with some concerns, and, there's a lot of things happening in our district that coincide with Moorhead, and we're in a construction project. I know people are frustrated. I understand that. The world is frustrated. However, I personally think that we have to coincide with what Moorhead is doing, because I'm afraid for our kids that are going to go to the career academy, if they show up a week late, that just puts that whole class a week late when you have to have the teacher redo the instructions and the safety, and here's the syllabus, and here's this, and here's that. And I know we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the career academy. But, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, should I ask my questions before or after? I don't know.
Let Mary Ann
I
do
didn't
her
bring it.
talk.
I didn't bring the calendars with, you want me, what do you?
Well,
want
we
me to
have,
talk about?
I have the ones from last time,
Yeah,
so
it hasn't changed.
it hasn't changed.
Are you
Okay.
proposing one though that we're voting on?
I think it was more discussion, like, with the board would want to do, like, which one.
Which one does the calendar committee recommend?
The teachers want after Labor Day, the admin cabinet wants to start before, like,
To be in alignment for the educational piece for our students. So that's, and actually the middle school at the time, or no, excuse me, let me go, the two elementaries at the time were kind of indifferent about whether we start before or after Labor Day, but the middle school and high school were very adamant that they wanted the Labor Day start. Wanted the day after Labor Day start.
Oh, gotcha, the late start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So both of these look like we have graduation on the 22nd. Then one was the early start before Labor Day, and then the other one was, well, they both start before Labor Day, but the one,
No.
No.
Well, the teachers would have workshop
oh, the
days.
workshop days, that's the
Before Labor
yellow
Day.
ones, okay. Okay,
What happens with like PSEO students? It's been a long time since I've been there. So, because colleges typically start before Labor Day, or at least when I went to college it was. So those students who sign up, the year before and are planning to take these college credits or college classes, what happens with those kids in the fall? Do they go to their class early, or does their professor hold out and wait for them?
We typically don't have many PSEO, we have college and high school.
Yep.
How many, especially in the fall semester, is there one or two?
Not maybe a handful.
Yeah, so
Okay, so how many kids are we talking about with the career academy?
we don't know yet because we're still waiting on registrations. We would hope that we're gonna just continue to grow that.
Right.
Now, I mean, there's no question, everything I've heard from Ed Minnesota is to not align with Moorhead.
Not aligned?
Right, but then again, I don't, I've got my own feelings about it, but I struggle a little bit. I still have not heard one student learning reason to not start before Labor Day.
My question is, the reason that we can start before Labor Day is because of our construction project, is that correct?
Correct.
yeah, so.
I knew, so I'm just trying to make sure I
This would
understand.
be the only year.
So
You'll have to get approval.
would it be an ethical option to take that just for our students when it's not a construction-related issue? That's the concern that I have.
But it is a construction-related issue as well.
Because our kids are also going to the Career Academy.
But if we're not, as a DGF construction project, the DGF construction project is not causing us to start the career academy early, or our kids starting early. It's not the reason that we're talking about altering our calendar. Our reason for altering the calendar is for our students to be aligned with more, which I actually agree with. My concern is it ethical to use our construction project as a reason to sidestep the calendar issue to support our students? Is it ethically balanced? I've never had to change a calendar. I've never had to.
I think it is, because if you consider, our construction project, in a sense, also includes Moorhead's construction project with regard to the Career Academy. So I think it makes perfect sense. It would be a bad situation if we weren't able to do it, frankly, because it's going to put those kids in a bad position. And I would support the early start.
That was my question, was just, I didn't want to walk out in front and say, sure, and then have it be something that, we didn't consider maybe as an ethical option.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. But that's how I would view it, as part and parcel.
Because we're a partnership with Moorhead in the
Yeah.
Career Academy, they're
If we
constructing that.
would have a different construction project, frankly, if we didn't have the Career Academy. And so we're tied into it.
Okay.
So,
Do you think, so I guess my concern is more about the career academy and then affects the calendar, like in turn. Is there like a percentage of seats that are saved for DGF kids? Like to attend a class, let's say, it's Moorhead's Career Center. If they fill a class, then the DGF kids don't get in?
That's not true.
No, that's my question. Do we have like a percentage of seats saved for DGF kids?
We're not
That,
even
do we have
done.
a contract that says, yes, 100%, X amount of kids can attend this? Because I feel like we changed the calendar just for those kids, and we don't know, maybe there's 5, maybe there's 50.
Mhm.
And then what if they're like, oh, sorry, we're full, we don't have any seats left?
And we know that DGF kids are not going to be denied courses at the Career Academy. That was a fundamental understanding as we've been working through that administratively between the two superintendents. And we ran a-
So, do we have
We don't have a number yet
percentage or
because-
number? Like, I'm worried that if they register, because we're waiting for Moorhead to register before our kids can register for the academy.
But remember, what they're doing right now is pre-registration. So they're just finding out how many kids are looking at wanting to take those classes. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And then that's when we'll schedule, okay, how many kids from DGF, how many sections of this should we be offering? So that we make sure that we've got DGF kids, Moorhead kids all covered. So those, you know, I think we're getting to about it. And I know we have high school staff members that are really struggling with the Career Academy in general. And it's unfortunate because I've heard discussions about this is going to be competition for our classes. And I really struggle with that because this is about kids getting expanded offerings.
Right.
And nobody's going to lose a job. And folks, community, DGF community, not one licensed teacher will lose a job because of the Career Academy of our existing staff.
So I think the question she's asking is they are meeting the school board, Brian's gonna talk about that in our work session tonight.
Yep.
They are gonna be meeting and talking about these questions that you're asking.
Perfect.
And
But
they'll
some-
come back and be able to answer those questions for you.
But some of it is, I mean, this stuff is just not a calendar issue.
No,
You know,
but I
it's-
mean, it's important to know if we have, like, if kids can go, that's why we're changing the calendar. Which I'm fine with, I
Yeah.
do think they should align, but also, I think there's other ways, when the kids register, if for some reason this calendar doesn't go the way people want it to, can they just register knowing your class starts a week early?
Well, I just want to point out, last year, we were supposed to start before Labor Day, and it got pushed back because of COVID and different construction stuff, so I get the frustration, I get the questions that are being asked, but, you know, I think to fully give the best opportunity for the staff and the kids to align. Yeah, that's a great question. We don't know the number. It might be 5 people, but this might work out with our construction project as well. So, you know, I know what kids are getting out May 16th. They're gonna have an extra long summer. They're gonna get out next year early and then come back after Labor Day. So I don't know if this is a vacation thing
Well, that's
or.
and I have never been a teacher or any of that, but truthfully, what is the big deal by starting prior to Labor Day? I don't, like when you said it's a vacation thing, I don't know.
I guess I don't know. I read the concerns and I thought we.
What's that?
Well, I don't wanna, yay.
What was that?
We do have, kids are here anyway. We start typically August 16th, we're gonna start with football, with volleyball, and with cross country. So it's not like we're not gonna have a huge chunk of student body here before anyway. So from an AD standpoint, it doesn't matter to me because they're already here. I'm already here at that, you know, things like that, so.
My conversations with Josh Haig, the high school principal at the Career Academy, as far as numbers and along kids, I asked the question of him a couple, 2-3 months ago, will there be a limit? And he just said, that's not even a consideration. We're letting your kids in.
So basically, if they have, like, say, let's just have like welding 1, and they have 80 kids from Clay County that want to attend that, they're gonna make enough courses to cover that welding class, or, and I'm sure they're just waiting to see how many classes they can create by what's the interest, because this is totally new to our kids and our communities, like, they've never had this option.
And that's
Then
one of the
they have to
reasons
hire for it.
it's, what's that?
They also have to hire. for
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
In some cases, and there may be some hirings still. But it's one of the reasons why this is just starting with DGF and more. So that before it gets expanded to more school districts, to make sure that we can handle based on the staffing and what else not, all the kids from DGF and more that want to be able to make it work. We're gonna probably take it incrementally for next year. For instance, DGF will probably look at only morning schedules, just because of trying to fit these block systems. You know, Moritz got a flex mod. We're not there yet with where we're going with all that. So we're trying to figure out what makes the most sense in the 2-year transition. And it may be just starting with morning ones. And then what they'll do is with DGF, if DGF is only looking at the mornings, that will then dictate if they've got 2 or 3 sections of welding, there'll be a welding one that'll be DGF kids in the morning with some Moorhead kids. And then there may be a couple other sections in the afternoon with Moorhead kids. But that way we know we've got both DGF and Moorhead. And we know that they've already put out, as far as a phase-in, these are the departments that we're looking at adding year after year. So it helps us in alignment working. The first 2 big areas are gonna be the industrial tech and the facts. Because there's 2, exactly, there's 2 that we know we need.
Right. I guess my other big thing is, like, we were asked to table it. I don't see the rush in having to vote on it if we have until June. What does it affect if we don't do that tonight?
I think people like to know, what I get, what's amazing to me, by the same group that wants it tabled, Education Minnesota DGF, we had to negotiate. It's taken 4 or 5 negotiations to get the April 1st deadline out of the contract. And now that's the group that wants to table it and go longer when we're trying to get all this planning moving forward. When everybody's had a voice, why wouldn't the board get it done at this point?
Well, if we take the calendar committee recommendation, it's not the early start.
By the teachers, correct. If we look at the teachers, what the teachers wanted from the calendar committee. Because the administrative cabinet wants it before Labor Day, because we feel it's in the best interest of student learning. I still haven't heard, even in that 11-item thing from yesterday, I haven't seen anything other than we think it'll be more normal for kids. If somebody can tell me what normal is right now with what we've been going through with COVID, if that's the biggest thing, because the only other thing I've ever heard is that it's usually warmer in August. The kids are already there.
Moorhead, just to clarify, Moorhead has already approved their calendar.
Exactly.
So I guess I would make a recommendation if Moorhead has already set their calendar that, I think the discussion is gonna be the same. But if you can get someone to second that, I kind of just feel like we need to move forward so parents can plan and daycare and their vacations or whatever they need to do. I just feel like we just need to move forward on this.
Absolutely. I think it's in the best interest of the kids, and I think the administrators have that goal. So thank you guys. I support that decision.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So,
Oh, David?
Is there a second? Second, Laura. Any further discussion?
Just clarify what the motion is for,
So we're gonna approve the
early start.
early start date.
And that would be the August 23rd is when staff development would occur, correct, Marianne? 23rd, 24th, 25th?
Yep, and then start school.
And then graduation.
Monday the 30th.
Yep, Monday the 30th, student contact with graduation on May 22nd.
So Monday, August 30th.
Is the first day of
First
school.
day. Got it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries
Is that just
5-2.
one? Or both?
Oh, okay. And mine is only because I think we should have heard, given the opportunity to table it till the next week, just so that the teachers had an opportunity to counsel it.
Okay, 9.2, we have the FY21 budget. Brian, go ahead.
So you have both.
This is in your packet.
Yeah, you got 3 different pieces in there. You've got an expenditure report. The expenditure report is a total of 14 pages. It's right near the end. There is a budget, one for the revised budget for, if you look at the 9-page one, that's on the revenue. And then basically all of that stuff by those different programs on the expenditures all go directly into a 1-page one, which is your summary. And it's probably the last of the pages is the 1-page one. So over the past few weeks, and I will again give Cindy so very much credit for the extra work that she's done to help me work through this as far as the grunt work. Because remember, we had to basically take the A1 budget. When you look at these sheets, the A1 is the adopted budget. So when you see the A1, and then you happen to see a working budget, a WB 21, it's a working budget until you approve it, and then that will become a B21 budget. So that would be the adopted revised budget. What you're seeing is we've gone back through, yes, there was an overestimation on pupil units from last spring, and that's been corrected. So really, on the revenue side, this is putting all the federal money in. This is all of our COVID money and what else not, and thank God for it, because if we didn't have that, this could be a really interesting one. Because it was, you take 70, 80 pupil units or weighted average daily membership, you're talking $600,000, $700,000 drop very quickly. Okay, so we've done a lot of work going back in. Everything in the payroll, everything is up to date. We've got everything in the construction project. The construction project is Fund 6. So when you happen to look through both on the expenditure budget report, you want to be able to look at Fund 6, which is page 10 of 14. And that's showing how much we've incurred at this point. So you can see the year-to-date, like right now we've got a budget of 500, or 5,100,000. You can, or 500,900,000, 5,900,000, and then year-to-date spent 5.1 million. So that's a total amount spent in. And again, you move it from the bond over into Fund 6 as you need the revenue for it. So this is all within the working budget, as you guys know, based on, and again, Matt is going to be talking about this a little bit tonight as they all come in. The good thing is, yes, the general fund is, we're expecting it to be in the black. But just remember, the reason it'll be in the black is we also have reserved accounts in that general fund. Staff development, LTFM, all those things. And just like the last few years, probably the only reason that we may end up being in the black in the general fund is because of some of those reserved accounts. So my point being, as you're coming into the next year, and it's going to be the same message, you're going to hear it from me, you're definitely going to hear it from Shannon as you go into next year. You can't continue to get 2% increases and give a particular part of your budget 3 to 4s. If 80% of your budget is personnel, and you're only getting 2%, that's why you start going from personnel being 76% of your budget, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, because it's having to take it from something else. So there gets to be a time and a place that you just have to, it works really well when you got increased student enrollment. But if you don't have increased student enrollment, that's going to be a difficult thing. And you're not going to see it for a couple more years until we get these numbers climbing back up. So that's my caution going into it for next year. We will put together a preliminary one. Cindy and I are going to work on that so that that's one I don't want to just leave for Shannon and say, hey, by the way, I'm out of here, but you get go put one together. So Cindy and I are going to work on the FY22 preliminary budget, and we'll have that for you in June for sure. So, and we'll bring it back to the fiscal personnel committee. But do you have any questions in general on what you're seeing when, again, I take some time when you get into, looking at, especially on the expenditure side. The revenue side is pretty simple. It's how many pupil units you have. That's where your big money is. When you look at the revenue, it's you can go right to page. You're going to look at your state funds, because that's where the big money is. We got budget general ed aid, budget 13,245. That's the crux of it. It's all based on your numbers. Your levy isn't anywhere close to that. It's 80% state, 10% federal, and 10%, now a little bit more than 10% this year on federal because of the COVID funds. But the good news is, we're still waiting on how much COVID-3 numbers will be. We haven't seen those totals. We've heard reports, and that might backfill some things nicely, but.
And just so, you know, if you're looking at the budget, one page or the bottom right-hand corner there, the 324, 557. When you take into consideration the construction anticipated transfers, take the construction out, that's the number in the budget. So I didn't know if that came through, but that's kind of where we're at, so just so everybody's on the same page.
The biggest area I would tell everybody to, you know, really focus, because remember, your Fund 1, you can transfer money out of Fund 1 into the other funds. But you typically can't transfer, if you're doing well in Fund 2 in the food service or in the community ed, you can't transfer it into Fund 1 to help Fund 1 out. So because Fund 1 is so much of your revenue and expenses, that's the big focus one. You know, that's the one that the audit really looks at. How much do you have of unreserved money compared to your expenses? You know, and that's where we've been dropping down under 8 as of the last audit. We've got to get that going, moving back up to over 10 at some point. But we've left that one for Shannon to lead the way on that.
Okay, let's see if there's a motion.
I'll move.
Motion by Ronnie, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nicole, any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7-0. 9.0 Policy 413, this is the second reading of Policy 413, Harassment and Violence. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Amy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brittany. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 9.4, this is the motion of Carol Rodney, school psychologist. This will be effective the end of the 2020-2021 school year. This is one of these retirements fiscal personnel went over. We want to thank Carol for her over 40 years of service to our school district and wish her well in retirement. So would you like to add anything else to that?
So Carol will not have there isn't the extra pot of money for an early retirement. You know, I know that sounds crazy, but it's kind of hard to get an early retirement, extra one from the board. You know, and she'll be the first one to say, I suppose I'm not going to get that when I turned 80. Probably couldn't qualify for the early retirement. But we have an MOU agreement worked out between both the school district and the union because there are some unique things with the contract language. And for instance, this 15 years at full time, well, this is a person who's worked with DGF 40 years.
So we wish her well. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Nicole, is there a second?
Second.
Second by David. Any other further question or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, right after this meeting, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We have a work session. Our architects are here and our construction management to go over the building project. Our next board meeting will be on Monday, April 12th. We'll start with an operations committee meeting at 5 o'clock here in the media center. If it is needing to be canceled, Brian will let those members know. Hopefully with permits hopefully coming in, we'll have a reason to have operation meetings. The next board meeting will follow at 6 p.m. So, all right, well, in the interest of time, I don't know where my phone is. What time is it? Meeting adjourned. 6:59. All right.
That's pretty close.
Cool.
We're gonna have this little break.
Yes, there's 5 minutes.
Drink as much coffee as we can.
We'll get that. I eat in 5 minutes.
Oh, you can
The
eat.
good thing is you don't have to.